Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm Simon Hyatt, and today we're on location at one of my favorite places in the world, the Western Development Museum in Saskatoon. We'll be here to help them celebrate a major anniversary, and we'll also be talking about an anniversary for an institution in our province that helps young people with disabilities. And as always, we want to connect with you, our viewers. You can visit our Facebook page, follow us on Twitter, email shawtvconnect@shaw.ca, or give us a call, 306-665-3796. And now here's what we're connecting to today. Every kid should be able to go to camp, and thanks to the folks at Camp Easter Seal, even those with disabilities can experience this rite of passage. We'll talk to Sue Wynn about the camp and Bruno Konechny about the fundraising efforts that support it. But first, Saskatchewan's history is about so much more than farming. For 65 years, the Western Development Museum has been telling our story. We'll look back at the museum's past and ahead to its future with Executive Director Joan Champ. Well, for 65 years, this incredible building, as well as its counterparts across the province, have been chronicling the history of Saskatchewan. Very happy to be joined by Joan Champ from the Western Development Museum, here to talk all about this great anniversary, as well as this remarkable building. This really is one of my favorite places in the whole world. I love the WDM, Joan.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting us in here. A great location to be. Let's talk, we'll get into the anniversary itself, but first let's talk a little bit about you, Joan. I know you've been with the WDM for a while. How did this come about? How did you end up working in this great place?
Well, it was my good fortune, first of all, but I started out, I'm a historian.
Mm-hmm.
I have my master's degree in Western Canadian history, and so I started out working on the Winning the Prairie Gamble exhibit, which was opened up in about 2005 to celebrate the province's centennial.
Mm-hmm.
And from there I went into exhibit production, and then about 3 years ago I had the great privilege of becoming the director of the Western Development Museum.
Wow, that's fantastic. You kind of have, when I was going to university, because I'm a history guy too, I took history at the University of Saskatchewan. Yeah. You kind of have the job that I wanted before I stumbled into this whole television thing kind of backwards.
Be careful what you wish for, Simon.
It's got to be an interesting job, but it's probably also a challenging job. What is your life like here?
Well, first of all, I love the Western Development Museum, and when I was working in exhibit production, it was my job from heaven. It was so exciting to be part of that creative process of developing a new exhibit, and it's a large exhibit. The Winning the Prairie Gamble exhibit is 21,000 square feet, so that kept us busy for quite some time, and I have never enjoyed a job more. Now my job's a little different. I'm in administration. I'm looking after the entire system, which is quite large. It's actually square footage wise, we're the second largest museum in Canada, second only to the Museum of Civilization in Hull.
Wow.
If you count our outdoor space, including the outdoor village in North Battleford, then we're probably the largest museum in Canada. So we have over 500,000 square feet of interior space, 5 big buildings. We have a staff of 47 full-time, and if we include part-time, we've got a staff of over 100. So it's a big operation to take care of on a operating budget of $5 million a year. That presents its challenges. And I would say our biggest challenges moving forward are, number one, to keep people coming through our doors, and that's actually going really well right now. We're really pleased with our visitor numbers, and but we want to keep that happening into the future.
For sure. I think that's probably one of the challenges for any museum.
Yes.
Not only reflecting that past that, of course, we all want to learn about, but bracing for the future, getting ready, and having displays that are relevant.
Exactly.
Off camera, you were talking a little bit about the importance of making it accessible to everyone, the importance of bringing in newcomers to our country, to our province, and sharing the story with them. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, we all know how much Saskatchewan's economy is growing, and that includes our population numbers have really grown over the past few years by the hundreds of thousands, and people coming to live here from all over the world, and from the Philippines or from India or China. And we're thrilled to be able to be a part of that, or at least to help in our way by offering our programs as well as just our exhibits, so that newcomers to Saskatchewan could come to the Western Development Museum or other institutions like us to learn a little bit more about their new home. And so we are also hoping that we can learn from from the newcomers as well, because one of the, as you know, some of the stories that we tell here at the Western Development Museum are about the early settlers.
Sure.
So we are hoping moving forward to be able to tell the stories of some of Saskatchewan's newest settlers in our exhibits and so on.
That's great. So 65 years. Going to do this a little bit backwards. Now I want to go back a bit to the beginning. How did this place come to be? Where did the WDM come from?
Well, it was back in the late 40s. After World War II, a lot of farm machinery or agricultural equipment was either being sold off for scrap, or it was being collected by a lot of American collectors were coming into Canada and the prairies and taking home a lot of our old steamers and farm equipment. So the government of the day thought it was really important to preserve those for future generations. So really the WDM started out with an act of the legislature in 1949 it started in North Battleford, was our first site, and really started out as an agricultural machinery museum. Since that time, we've grown quite a bit to, as I said, 4 locations: Moose Jaw, North Battleford, Saskatoon, and Yorkton. And we also have expanded the stories that we tell. We've evolved quite a bit from being a pioneer tractor museum, although we continue to honor those roots.
Sure.
And we continue to showcase our old steam equipment, as well as a lot of the agricultural stories. It's so much a part of Saskatchewan's history. We're always going to be honoring that and showcasing that. But moving forward, we tell so many other stories about the province, including the story of healthcare, the story of our natural resources, and the list goes on. And so we'll continue to evolve moving forward into the future.
Absolutely. I think that's some pretty impressive foresight when you look back to that post-World War II era to recognize the importance of keeping that. And man, the collection that has been built up here is incredible. You know, when folks come here and they visit Boomtown, you know, of course they see this, they see the cars. Then there's another entire building full of things, the curatorial center. It's not just the machinery. There are so many things in the collection. It's pretty impressive scope.
Yes, and we're expanding on that scope. Moving forward we're just celebrating our 65th anniversary, and we're on the cusp of some changes in the way we're doing things here at the WDM. And one of them is our focus on our collecting, because we have a very, very strong collection in the area of pioneer artifacts and agricultural artifacts and so on, pre-1950 artifacts. Moving forward, we really want to collect from the more modern era to tell the story of Saskatchewan in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and even up to present day. So for example, just in this past year, we collected an unmanned aerial drone that was developed right here in Saskatoon. We've also collected an electric vehicle from Papa Bravo Innovations that's used underground in potash mines, because Saskatchewan has such a legacy of innovation. Coming from those agricultural roots, farm people especially had to be resourceful and innovative and inventive, and we've always showcased those stories, and we are going to continue to do that, even though it's not always necessarily related to agriculture. So moving forward, we really want to continue to build on our strengths and look at collecting for a more modern era.
Absolutely. There's so many great stories that go along with those artifacts. I know I can't even remember specifically the exact details of it, but there was the piece of machinery that was built by the gentleman that thought they could completely revolutionize the way farming was done, and then somebody came along and invented something that was even better. I know what you're referring to.
That was a stooking machine.
Exactly, yeah.
And I mean, stooking was probably the last form of agriculture that wasn't mechanized. It was developed before the combine, but it was built by a guy who was so tired of bending down and putting together those sheaves and getting all his arms all scratched up in the really tough labor, building the stooks of wheat ready for harvest. So he developed this machine, and then within like years of him developing it, the combine came, and it totally did away with the need for stooks in the harvest operation. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stories that go with the artifacts that we have here at the WDM.
Absolutely. Of course, we got the cobalt machine, that whole story. There's so many things, as you say, that have come out of Saskatchewan that I think really help, enhance our reputation and show that it's not just wheat growing out there in the fields. There's a lot going on here. And of course, with the 65th anniversary, you're celebrating that all year long. I can guarantee you where I'm going to be on June 15th, because there's a deal. right? Where you come here on your birthday, you pay a special rate, right?
If you're 65, though, and I don't think you're anywhere close to 65 yet,
I've still
Simon.
got a few years.
So if you have a friend or a relative that's turning 65, Simon, you can bring them to the museum and on their 65th birthday, and we'll give them a present and free admission to the museum.
Okay, I'll have to adjust my plans slightly. Maybe I'll still come here. This is a great
come
place to celebrate your birthday.
Anyway, for sure.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about the future, where we're going. Do you see more growth for this facility? I mean, you talked about how big it is and the footprint it already has. Is it going to continue to grow, or is it more just in terms of the types of exhibitions and the artifacts, that type of thing?
Yes, absolutely. It'll be in the area of exhibits, so that we want to continue to offer new exhibits, new programs to our visitors, so that when they come here, there'll be something maybe that they haven't seen before. We also bring in traveling exhibits from other places. For example, we've got some exhibits from the Royal Saskatchewan Museum coming up that show that our history of, in the natural history world and dinosaurs and so on, that normally the WDM would never showcase, but it provides something new for our visitors to see. And so we're going to, in terms of growth and new directions, it will be in our area of our exhibits and our programming that we'll continue to offer. Yeah.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit about, off the top, about the number of employees, the number of people you have working under the roof to, of course, keep this place running. Another big factor in that is, of course, the volunteers. There's such a huge volunteer effort, and so many people are so dedicated and so passionate. I love coming here on those days when you see the guy working the telegraph machine or working in the watch shop, because they are so passionate about these things.
Yes, well, thank you so much for bringing that up, because that's such an important part of our operation here at the WDM. System-wide, we have about 1,200 volunteers. Most of those are here in Saskatoon. And last year, our volunteers gave us over 60,000 hours of their time, and it's just, we literally could not do what we do in terms of programming and in terms of the tours that we do. They really help make the museum so accessible and welcoming, because a lot of our volunteers, as you say, are doing demonstrations on the street or offering or giving tours or just welcoming people in. And then we have a lot of volunteer work going on behind the scenes in terms of helping us restore our artifacts and getting them ready for exhibit. So yes, that is a very, very important part of our operation and our volunteers.
Absolutely. Well, it's a big job you have here, of course, because it's a big place, not just here in Saskatoon, but all over the province.
Yes, and when you say you mean, for me, it's a team that we have a wonderful staff, a dedicated staff, a great board, as well as volunteers. And so yes, it's all of our work together that helps make this place keep humming.
Absolutely. Well, come on, check it out. There is, of course, no better time than the 65th anniversary. So much going on this year.
That's
Joan,
right.
Thanks so much for coming on Connect and talking about it.
Thank you so much, Simon, for inviting us.
All right, and of course, one of the big factors here at the WDM is their classic cars, which is also what the second half of our show is about, as we'll be talking about the Dragons Car Show coming up in support of Camp Easter Seal.
Every kid should be able to go to camp, and thanks to the folks at Camp Easter Seal, even those with disabilities can experience this rite of passage. We'll talk to Sue Wynn about the camp and Bruno Konechny about the fundraising efforts that support it.